Have you recovered? Because I haven't. I ain't ever going to recover from this. I think I'm going to be living off this for the rest of my days until the very ending of the world, until I have breathed my final breath. I will forever be thinking about what I witnessed at Villa Park on Wednesday night, October the 2nd, 8 o'clock through to 10 o'clock in the Champions League when Aston Villa laid the smackdown upon Bayern Munich 1-0. I've got my half and half scar still on. I'm telling you, I thought I'd never buy one, but I did it because, I just thought maybe something special happens. Who knows? Unai Emery's been there, done it. He's outsmarted many a great team. Villa have beaten Man City. We've beaten Arsenal twice last season. We destroyed Man United a couple of years ago, destroyed Newcastle a couple of years ago, 6-1 against Brighton. So incredible results. And you think to yourself, maybe there's another one. And the best thing about it all is that Unai Emery has brought such joy to our lives in the last 2 years that the way how like France built the Statue of Liberty for the US, right? And built it for them, put it over there across the Atlantic out on in New York. And I can't help but think that maybe we Villa fans should build something similar, a similar sized statue of Professor Unai with his game formation, like a tactical formation, his own tactical pad almost, and stick it up in the Basque Country somewhere, just off Hondarribia, where he's from, or San Sebastian or Donostia, as they call it in the Basque Country. Just because what he has brought to us, so many great moments already. But you can't help but feel that the best is yet to come. And Unai Emery himself, he wrote a really beautiful social media message yesterday on his Instagram account. And because he clearly recognizes the incredible achievement it is, and it's yet another step in Aston Villa becoming one of the truly elite clubs of Europe. But afterwards, you think of Arsenal when they have a big result and there's wild celebrations and they get criticized for that sometimes. It doesn't really bother me, but I can see why people comment on it because it almost you could argue it looks like they think they've won it all by having one big win. Whereas Unai Emery last night, whilst the players, we celebrated so much, the fans are celebrating. Unai Emery was kind of straight down the tunnel, and he was just sort of business as usual. Carry on, and he's probably thinking about Manchester United as he's walking down the corridor already. He's thinking, job done, on to the next one. It's almost like for him, as somebody who's won 4 Europa Leagues, Champions League semi-finals, won league titles in France, he's won multiple trophies throughout his career. As the winner that he is, he's probably thinking, all right, yeah, great. Move on to the next one. This is not the peak of who we are. This is not the peak moment of our time or during his time at Aston Villa. This is yet another peak. And there will be many more to come. The best is yet to come. Now, I recorded the reaction at the final whistle, and this is absolutely something you want to check out. The noise was crazy. Now, I thought I'd do just a little bit of a deeper dive on what happened last night against Bayern. So let's go to the tactical pad. Come on, our old friend. There it is. Now, as I always say, I will make this as accessible as possible for those listening on audio. But here on YouTube, what you can visualize. Basically, I've just got the two teams from last night set up. But one thing I do have is I do have Kingsley Coman and Musiala there in the centre. Now, the reason I had that is because I thought that Musiala would start because Musiala is one of Bayern Munich, arguably Bayern Munich's best player. He's certainly the player that can make the most difference. And they didn't start him. Now, you can look at it in two ways. Maybe he's carrying a slight knock. They played Leverkusen the other day. He's a young player. Maybe he likes to balance up the minutes. Okay, I get that. But you can look at it in another way and think, did they slightly underestimate Aston Villa? Did they think they had the players to go in there where they thought, we don't need to play Musiala? And if things aren't going well, we can bring him on in the second half and sort them out. Well, if it was a case of underestimating Villa, backfired, didn't it? I mean, I don't think they underestimated us, given the fact they put out such a strong team. But it does make you wonder a little bit, like, why did Musiala not start? Very interesting. But anyway, so Kingsley Coman ended up going out onto the left. Serge Gnabry was sort of on the right. Elise played off. Kane was coming central. But what did we talk about in the preview the other day, for those who watched it? We talked about the fact that Bayern Munich play with a hyper-aggressive press, hyper-aggressive team. They always have 70% possession. And last night, again, it was there or thereabouts. I think it was in the high 60s that they got against Villa. And what happens is you'll have Kane coming quite deep or moving around or sticking up top. Elise coming here, working in the centre area. You'd have a Gnabry coming in or sticking out right. And you'd have the fullbacks and Konrad Laimer coming high up the pitch. Joshua Kimmich coming back out to the right if they needed to play outfield. But Kimmich sort of sticking centrally and playing around, significant amount in the air, in the middle. I thought Joshua Kimmich, I thought he was fantastic to see live. I thought he was a really dominant, brilliant player, really trying to make things happen. Kingsley Coman as well, sticking out on the left against Ezri Konsa, and Alphonso Davies coming forward. It was underlapping, overlapping. It was really like, at times, it looked a little bit like, basically six up top almost. And Joshua Kimmich and Pavlovic sort of in the centre, of Kimmich moving around a fair amount. And Upamecano and Kim, the two of them, as the options, and Manuel Neuer almost playing as a kind of as the third man. Most teams now like to play with three at the back if they're pushing a full back on. If they play with a back four out of possession, they like to have a back three and the two pivots kind of sit in front of them. With Bayern, it's almost like put everybody the two fullbacks forward to go support the other four up top. The two pivots kind of sit a little bit, and then you've got the back three almost as Manuel Neuer. As the auxiliary sweeper keeper almost. And Upamecano and Kim really playing very far apart from each other at times. Just to, continue, put the pressure on, playing very high up. So Bayern Munich, I think Unai Emery knew this was going to happen. Accepted that Bayern were the team that would probably, if there was going to be a lot of space in the game, Bayern would probably had the players that were going to do a bit more damage in that sense. So Unai Emery, genius that he is, he tightens up. And what happened a lot? Konsa on Coman. That was an area I thought Konsa in the first half absolutely excelled. I thought him and Jaden Philogene were absolutely tremendous. And Philogene coming back and doing his defensive duties is something we didn't see Villa do on the right-hand side against Ipswich the other day with Leif Davis. It felt like Davis had a lot of time in that first half. Probably Leon Bailey not doing much, but at the same time, I think Leon Bailey, do you know what? I think he's carrying an injury. I think watching him last night going up against Alphonso Davies, and it was like he was always cutting back inside. It was like he didn't back himself to go at anybody, really. And I can't help but think that was probably linked to an injury of some type. Now, Philogene would come back and help with defensive duties against Davis and Coman. And I thought Coman couldn't deal with Konsa. I thought Konsa looked like he looked like an England international. He looked like a player who should play there at all times or start for England. And what was happening sometimes is that with the Bayern were pressing so many forward, you'd almost have six at the back. A Ramsey coming back to support a Dean, a Philogene coming back there. It was almost like at times Villa were doing this and coming a little bit deeper. But the thing was, it would encourage Bayern to come forward. And what would it leave? Ollie Watkins and Upamecano as singular players up here. And I thought, I said this in the preview that Upamecano was a weak spot for Bayern. Max Merrill said it as well in the interview I had with him, German football expert, that um, you could feel that the ball forward was always on. And I think in the first 10 minutes, from what I recall watching it last night in the stadium, it felt like Villa kind of took about 5 minutes to sort of just get a grip of like, okay, this is who Bayern are. This is what the players are doing. This is where they can threaten us. And there was one ball I recall over the top that Luca Dean maybe switched off, and I think it was Nabry got him behind. Nothing ended up coming of it, but it was one moment where you thought, okay, that's something that could happen quite a lot this tonight. But what was happening after the first 10 minutes was, I think Bayern started to give the ball away a little bit. And it felt like Villa started to just at times get a bit of possession on the ball. And it was in the third minute, I watched it back actually, in the third minute where Yuri Tielemans had a moment where he got the ball and he tried to pass to Watkins and he underhit it. And what I remember seeing that in the stadium was, I remember Tielemans getting it. And again, as we said this in the preview, if Tielemans gets it deep, the option is then you can just hit one over the top into Watkins or down a channel. And Watkins is such a world-class striker, he's going to cause problems from Pamecano all night. And there was one pass he attempted that if he'd just done it over the top, Watkins was in. So that was one quick warning sign, I thought, for Bayern. But then as the game progressed and Villa came a little bit more into it, Watkins did finally get that ball through. And Upamecano brought him down. And I was right behind the linesman. I was right in line with it. It was a red card. It was the last man. It was a blatant foul. And it reminded me a little bit of when, Vidic brought down Gabia Bonlahor in the League Cup final in 2010. It was like that. It was like, well, why have you not? Why has no decision been made here? They didn't even give a foul for it, which was absolutely outrageous. It was so clear in the stadium. I was literally behind the linesman. I was like, well, if I've seen it, how have you not seen it? I mean, taking off my Villa blinkers here, it's blatant. Whatever. Same thing happened again. Quick ball into Watkins, and Upamecano could not deal with him. Watkins gets past him, and it's a foul again. Another foul. Yellow card. I was in line with it again. He was the last man. I just think it should have been a red. I just don't know how. I don't know. Just a fair few decisions last night that leave me wondering how the hell that happened. But look, I said the other day a big thing about Bayern is that they remind me of the German national team. I don't want to repeat myself because I said this before, but a lot of the reasons Germany I think have struggled in recent years is because they play the hyper aggressive style that Bayern play, and it always leaves the break on. And in international tournaments, if you get done once, it can be the end of you. South Korea have done it to them. Mexico have done it to them. There's a few different teams have done it to them. Japan did it to them in the most recent World Cup as well. There's just various teams that have punished Germany's high line. Maguire in goal as well. And I think that's how you do it. That's how you do it to Bayern. And Unai Emery clearly realised that and planned for it and drilled it into the players. And the players, I thought last night, were absolutely fantastic. Now, one man who really stuck. I think man of the match for me, it's impossible to choose. You could pick Martinez for some of the incredible saves he made, his fantastic distribution, his mature distribution. You could go with Diego Carlos turning up, being the henchman after all the tough times he had at Ipswich the other day, some of the pretty poor starts to the season he's had. Ezri Konsa been a fantastic. Luca Dean, Tielemans, Anana, Rogers, Watkins, John Duran coming on. But do you know what? For me, I think Pau Torres was man of the match. I think that's where I'd go for man of the match for me. But Jaden Philogene pushes him extremely close. The mental fortitude of that young man, whose primary experience as a footballer in the Championship, has come into this season in the Premier League where he's been injured, so he hasn't really played much. Came on against Ipswich, had a bad day out, had the fans on his back. The thing I said after that was, why would you get on a young player's back? Look, Unai Emery re-signed him for a reason. He knows how good he is. Be patient. If we all gave out about Bailey a couple of years ago, and look what he did last season. He's one of the best attackers in world football. And Jaden Philogene last night, The pressure was on him last night, like you would not believe. The mental fortitude of him to do his defensive duties so well, but go up one on one and compete. Conrad Lima, when Jaden Philogene had to come out here to the left, and Conrad Lima had to deal with him, he left Conrad Lima lying on his arse. Conrad Lima was sitting there looking up at the stars at night, like the bloody uh, um, Coldplay song "Yellow." Look at the stars. He's singing the lyrics to that. He's looking up, he's thinking, what just happened? And he can look up at the stars at night, and all he sees is Jaden Philogene's face. Conrad Lima had the lesson of a lifetime off him, and probably gone on Wikipedia today to go, who the hell is Jaden Philogene Bidace? This bloke, who is he? Phenomenal performance on both sides of the pitch. He had a lot to do, left and right. He'd been instructed to do so much, and I thought he was absolutely brilliant. And let me just give you a few stats as well from FB Ref about Jaden Philogene. Can you guess who had the most tackles and interceptions? Jaden Philogene by a country mile. 8, plus 2 clearances, and on one occasion blocked off a pass by standing in its way. Do you know who had the most each after that? Tackles and interceptions. Yuri Tielemans and Luca Dean on 6 each. Jaden Philogene with 8. And you could see it in pre-season last year with Jaden Philogene that he played on the left-hand side, but he played as a fullback a lot of the time. He played as a kind of, he'd have to play one and always come and do his defensive duties. He looked good at it in pre-season last year for Villa. And if you look at Hull and you look at his numbers, his underlying stats there, his defensive numbers were fantastic. Now, was it tracking back or was it having to press forward and press from the front? It could be a combination of both, but his defensive numbers have always been there that you think he's good. He's good at this. Maybe in another life he plays as a fullback, but that was seriously impressive from him. So yeah, I thought I'd just pick that out from Jaden Philogene. Another player worth talking about as well, Morgan Rogers. You know, this guy, he again, like Jaden Philogene, he came of age. I think Morgan Rogers has come of age already with Villa, but I think that's the biggest game he's ever had for Villa. And last night, he looked absolutely at ease in the presence of Bayern Munich's players. 7 take-ons, most in the team, 5 successful. So he dribbled past 7 of his take-ons, 5 of his dribbles were successful. 3 shot-creating actions, 4 progressive carries, 9 loose ball recoveries. Absolutely brilliant. And then John Duran comes on the pitch, and not just the goal, 4 aerial duels, he wins 2, most in the team. Ollie as well, 2 aerial duels, wins 1. Up against Upamecano as well. You know, big, tall, strong guy. The two of them having to do the ugly stuff. It's such a tough role when you're just on your own up there, and most of the time you get the ball and you lose it because the odds are against you with your back to goal. You're having to run around. You're exhausting yourself. So what Watkins did in that 70 minutes for John Duran to then come on with the fresh legs and get the goal. Watkins' job, you talk about stats or whatever else. You watch football, you look at it, the eye test tells you what he did last night was phenomenal. Just the incessant work rate. We've all known this about Watkins. It's not just the goals he scores, it's what he does off the ball as well. He's just a fantastic striker. And to have Duran and Watkins as 2 complementary forwards, my God. My God. Do you remember when we had Ross McCormack up front? Do you remember when we were all like, we got Grant Holt and wondered is he the one who's going to get us European football? Is he the one who might keep us, might help us in the race for 16th place? Got Ollie Watkins and John Duran now. 2 of the best strikers in world football. It just bends the brain. But, the man I thought was man of the match, Pau Torres. I thought watching him in the stadium, what him and Emi Martinez did with distribution was absolutely critical. It was critical. I praise Emi Martinez for this as well, because Emi Martinez, there were numerous occasions where he came out and caught the ball. You think of the 2 saves, that massive save he made from Harry Kane at the end, the massive save he made from Serge Gnabry at the end as well. Those 2 humongous saves. Because one thing I do want to say is Aston Villa restricted Bayern Munich. For all the possession they had, we restricted them to very, very few chances. Extremely few. They had maybe 1 in the first half. Elise's incredible save from Martinez, but that was from distance. So you're happy if you're restricting them to things like that. In the second half, it wasn't till very, very late in the game where Villa was starting to tire. They had a couple of subs that came on. They were really putting pressure on. I thought Tell looked really good. He probably should come on a bit earlier, actually. Musiala, his quick feet, he's like a balletic grace with him. Fantastic ball from Musiala through the line into Gnabry. Brilliant save from Martinez. And then what a save from the header as well from Harry Kane. It was just a phenomenal, phenomenal piece of work. But if you look at Martinez as well. I thought he was getting the ball and his distribution. He kept his calm. He used that World Cup experience. He sort of he wouldn't just quickly throw it. He wouldn't look at Bayern and think, oh, all their players are out of position. Throw it now, throw it now. Instead, he'd be like, no, calma, calma, as they say, and took his moment, rolled it out to Pau Torres all the time. Torres and Dean, that passing route. Because all roads go through Yuri Tielemans, don't they, this season? But yesterday was a unique game where Aston Villa are not the ascendant team. We're the more defensive team. And it's one in which all roads go through Pau Torres. If you look at the passing map, Pau Torres, through him. He touched the ball the most in the team. On 54, he made 4 tackles, 4 blocks, 4 clearances, 2 shot creating actions. And what do you know? 1 assist. And he received the most passes as well on 33. So it wasn't Tielemans' day yesterday. It was Pau Torres. Pau Torres was the Statue of Liberty within Aston Villa's team. And I think that the distribution effects of Martinez and Pau Torres yesterday were just fantastic. One thing as well you would say is that there was a moment in the second half when Pau Torres got the ball got the ball for the assist, right? Before it, if you watch it closely, I was sitting right by where Torres and Dean were. And I think just before it, maybe Martinez had caught the ball from a corner or he got the ball somehow anyway. And Bayern were getting back into shape. But one thing I noticed was that Bayern had a very relentless press, right? They made it very hard for Villa. And that was what was so impressive about Martinez. He never panicked when Musiala would approach him. He'd wait, make the pass to Pau Torres. And Pau Torres was the same. He wasn't panicked. He'd wait, find that pass inside into the striker or find the pass out wide to Luca Dean. But last night, there was one moment where Bayern, and it was Musiala was over here. It's sort of central, and they'd left a gap on the right on Villa's left. And I was in and I thought, do you know what? It's on here. It's on here. If you get that ball into Pau Torres, something could be on here because there's space out on the left, and we haven't had much of it tonight. And Pau Torres with his distribution, something can happen. I swear on my life, I was thinking this. I'm not saying it after the fact, right? And Diego Carlos saw it as well. Diego Carlos was pointing. Look at this picture here. Diego Carlos pointing. He saw it. And the ball out to Pau Torres. Bit of space for once. Bayern slept. Ball into John Duran. And Ollie Watkins, all that work he put in. He left Upamecano knackered as well. John Duran. I mean, firstly, what a ball from Pau Torres, my man of the match. Incredible pass. His distribution is just phenomenal. John Duran. If you look at the goal, there's a very brief moment in the replays where you can see he has a really quick, fast look behind him. Now, I think in post-match interviews, he said he looked at Upamecano to see where the defender was. And they talked about how they knew Manuel Neuer was off his line a lot. So he'd been told about this and maybe just go for it. And he maybe been watching as a sub as well. You know, they said Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, the OG super sub, used to watch opposition teams and figure out ways to come on and do damage. Maybe John Duran did that as well. But you do wonder if in his peripheral vision as well, he looked for Upamecano and he maybe saw Manuel Neuer's the color. Manuel Neuer's in bright orange. He maybe saw him, even subconsciously saw him, and knew I can just hit this. I talked at length about this, the disallowed goal John Duran had against Young Boys, right? And how when he got that ball, he turned and he whipped it out left to Jacob Ramsey. Jacob Ramsey comes forward, hits a pass really hard and firm into him. And John Duran came in on that pass, I think it was from the outside the area. And the finish was, it probably looks simple. It's an absolutely 10 out of 10 world-class finish. Very few strikers, very few of the best strikers can do that. His finishing ability is as elite as it gets, I think. the header against Leicester. But that young boy's disallowed goal. And the reason I compared it to anyone was it was a Lionel Messi goal. It was identical to a goal Lionel Messi got against Real Madrid. It was that coming in and just whipping it and keeping it low. The ball's been hit hard into him and hitting it hard, like almost like a pass, being able to keep it down with a bend into the bottom corner. That is an absolutely extraordinary finish because 99% people in the world put it over the bar, they mishit it, they put it wide. That was brilliant. And there was a reason I raved about that so much. I think someone joked about it in the comment section, but why was I talking about it so much? Because it was incredible. It was a unique finish. And last night, that ball into Duran and that finish, I wonder if subconsciously he knew. But if he didn't, and the fact he'd studied and knew Noah was coming off his line and there might be a gap open, an opportunity, that is world-class football. That's a world-class footballer. That finish was extraordinary. And the angle I had of the pass into him and the finish, oh man, special. Special ball from a special defender in Torres and a special, special finish from a world-class striker in John Duran. It was fantastic. Fantastic. And yeah, I said the best is yet to come from Unai Emery. I think the best is yet to come from John Duran. I really think it is. So there's not loads more to say really. I mean, one or two other things you could mention. Ezri Konsa, mentioned him on Kingsley Coman. Coman coming off at half time, probably in floods of tears, sitting there, with his teddy bear clutching it. I thought Ezri Konsa was just out of this world, out of this world. He blocked 4 passes by standing in their path. So his reading of the game, the ability to do that, the reading of it is, him standing in the correct passing channels and passing lanes. You cannot underestimate that, the ability to read the ball. So, I've given thrown a whole load of stats at you. And something else I just briefly wanted to talk about as well was that with Bayern, I did mention the other day that against Leverkusen, their fullbacks, they had Rafael Guerrero and they had Alphonso Davies bombing on, right, all the time. And in that game, against Leverkusen, Alphonso Davies had 7 progressive carries, right? So that's progressing the ball, 10 yards towards the opposition goal. It's effectively making things happen by pushing forward, dribbling with the ball. And he only had one. He had one against Villa last night. Most passes and touches, Joshua Kimmich, by quite a long way. He was there, Tielemans last night. I think it was a pleasure to watch Kimmich last night. And you know something I saw about him? And this is where Villa need to learn a little bit. There was one occasion where they did a VAR check for a handball, which was just absurd. It was never, ever a handball. But Kimmich, instead of putting the ball out for the corner, he stood in the centre and he held on to it. And he was talking to the referee. And it puts pressure on VAR then as well, because Bayern Munich walk out there with their big dick energy, their Manuel Neuer, Emi Martinez big dick energy, and they're saying we know it's a penalty, so what we're just going to wait and you're going to give it to us. And there were so many occasions last night where Joshua Kimmich was talking to the referee. He was doing it, but doing it in a way that was like, that's not going to get him a booking. That's smart. And I think that's the sort of thing Villa in time are going to learn how have to do. Harry Kane's tackle on Rodgers last night was out of frustration because he gave the ball away, and it actually ended up being quite a dangerous tackle, and he should have been booked for it. And I just wonder if Villa's captain should have just been on them and like been at the referee and said, "Hey, what's this all about?" And in future as well, if we think we should have a penalty, do what Kimmich did: hold on to the ball, don't put it out for a corner. No, hold on for it. Don't put it out for a throw. Hold on for it and wait, and look at him and say, we're Aston Villa. This is our penalty. That's sort of just something I witnessed in the stadium that I thought interesting to see. That this is a Joshua Kimmich, a guy who's won the lot, right? And that's the mentality they have. But just for those who can see here, what I loved as well. I mentioned the other day that Harry Kane loves to come deep. You can't follow him because if you follow him, just for 1 second, it opens a space in behind, and Elise can run into it, or a Gnabry can run into it, or whoever. Carlos didn't fall for it ever. Carlos was fantastic. Fair play to him. Fair play to him. Tough start to the season, and I thought he was brilliant. All of them were great. And we sort of played with a kind of mid block. We didn't Mid to low block almost. It wasn't like Sean Dyche, skip playing scared. It was playing smart. That's how I would call it. And for all the possession that Bayern had, for all the ball that Joshua Kimmich had, he never really quite felt that Villa were ever giving them too much space to run into. He never felt like those runs they were wanting to make in behind, there was ever really room for them to do it. Maybe apart from one or two occasions with Gnabry. The passing lanes that they would want to go into, it just wasn't happening. So what would happen is they'd get the ball kind of further forward, and then they'd want to go out wide, but they'd have two players out there, so they couldn't really do it. They want to run in behind, but Villa weren't really giving them the room to do it. And then they'd have to sort of come inside, but the problem was it was all bunged up in the middle. So they'd have a Tielemans jump on them or an Onana jump on them. It was just a masterclass of football, really. A pleasure to witness it and to see, such world class players be bamboozled, really, by Emery ball. And there's a reason Unai Emery has won 4 Europa Leagues. There's a reason he's been to Champions League semi-finals in the last couple of years with Villarreal. A team that isn't any bigger than Aston Villa. Aston Villa won the Europa League with him. They got to a Champions League semi-final with him. Why can't Aston Villa dare to dream of what's possible with Unai Emery in charge? An incredible performance which Villa were mature, knew the power of Bayern Munich and knew what could be exploited about them. It was just phenomenal. And Manchester United next. I'll talk a bit more in depth about that. I think Ramsey's a loss for that game. I actually think Ramsey blasting into their left-hand side where they seemed to leave a lot of space at the time, going at a delict. That would have been. I feel if Ramsey's out, we'll find out. Maybe he isn't. But coming off last night in the first half, you sort of fear he might be out for a couple of weeks. But look, Unai Emery, he always has a way. He has ways and means. He knows what's going on in this world far more than any of us. So thank you, Unai Emery. Thank you, Aston Villa. What an incredible performance. What a historic night. Up the mighty Villa.